D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Derek Mason and Adam Vingan here with you. Willie Donick will be along later in the program. He's down in Big D, where the Predators are preparing to take on the Dallas Stars tonight at 7 o'clock. Pre-game starts at 6, of course, right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. So Willie will be along in the second hour. We are going to do our first part of our silly underdog picks bowl draft, I guess is what you would call it.
Mm-hmm.
So we will do 2 rounds of this. We'll do one today and one before Christmas after the first round of CFP games have been played. So we will do that around 12:20, 12:25. So if you want to get in on it, just be prepared around 12:20, 12:25 to represent the people. We always have a prize to give away. Tim Hasselbeck will join us at 11:30. Elliot Freeman will join us at 1 o'clock. So before our show, Derek, the final segment of Chase and Big Joe, we always find out what day it is, along with celebrity birthdays. And the best part about that segment, other than I always like to play along with celebrity birthdays, is that Frazier will read what day it is. And you can tell that he hasn't looked at it until right before the segment. So he doesn't know what day it is. And there are times where he'll read things that he doesn't know. I think the most recent, at least, infamous example, it was Zinfandel Day, like the wine.
Yeah.
He said Zinfandel Day. He didn't know that it was Zinfandel. I think that's how you pronounce it. The wine. Zinfandel. I don't know. I'm not a wine guy personally.
I'm not a wine connoisseur either.
So today is apparently National Ding-a-ling Day. And I wanted to know what it was. So National Ding-a-ling Day, apparently to observe it, call someone you haven't heard from in a while. It was invented in 1972 by Frankie Heil, who placed a free ad in Chase's calendar of events with his P.O. Box number in Melrose Park, Illinois, stating that for $1, you can join the National Ding-a-ling Club. And the point is, I guess you call people you haven't talked to in a while.
I wonder, where did he get that name from?
Who knows?
You ding-a-ling?
Yeah.
Like what?
Like ding-a-ling, maybe it sounds like a bell. You call someone ding-a-ling. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess because that's
for
all those young
kids.
For all those young kids that don't know what a phone actually sounds like ringing in your house, it sounds like ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling.
Yeah, if you want to know what it sounds like in the 1950s, that's what it sounded like.
So, okay.
So I could see National Ding-a-ling Day, apparently. So if you're listening and you want to participate, reach out to someone you haven't talked to in a while.
Absolutely.
Reconnect with someone. Maybe an old flame.
Well, if you got a new flame, you better not reach out to the old flame.
That's what burner phones are. That's what burner phones are for, Derek.
That's too much work, man. That is too much darn work.
Adam, I don't even think you have a burner phone. No. I don't even know what it is.
He's talking about burner phones. He never picked up a burner phone in his life.
You never bought a burner phone before?
Exactly. My wife would literally murder me, and she could do it.
Yeah,
she could do it. So I Anyway, so today, speaking of other programs on our station in the morning, Robbie and Joe had Charles Robinson on from Yahoo Sports.
Good interview this morning.
It was a good interview. Always like listening to Charles Robinson of Yahoo Sports, covers the NFL from a national perspective. And the benefit of that, of course, is we get a perspective from outside of Nashville. We speak so much about the Titans and what's going on here. It's easy to get into our little bubble, but it's always interesting to hear and read how other people perceive the Titans. And Joe Rexroad asked an interesting question to Charles Robinson this morning, because we spent a lot of time, and we did it yesterday, talking about Amy Adams Strunk and her invisibility. I think Joe said that it's been 6 years since she took questions from assembled independent reporters. She did a one-on-one with Teresa Walker of the Associated Press after she fired John Robinson, but that's the closest we've got to hearing from Amy Adams Strunk in that setting. So Joe asked Charles Robinson about is the lack of speaking, for lack of a better term, from Amy Adams Strunk, is it an outlier among NFL owners? Are we making maybe too big of a deal of the fact that she hasn't spoken? Do other owners speak more frequently? And Charles Robinson did say it is rare for an owner to go 6 years without speaking. But then he said something else, David, if we have that clip. If he did say something else about needing to speak and what it could mean for Titans fans. This was Charles Robinson this morning on Robbie and Rexrode.
So this situation is rare, and I understand fans being upset. And I think a bigger part of the story, too, as the stadium stuff rolls forward, fans are going to get absolutely shell-shocked out of their minds about the whole PSL thing, how much tickets are now going to cost in a real-world way, because you're going to have people are sitting there going, okay, I have to pay tens of thousands of dollars to keep the tickets that I have right now. That's what this is going to look like going forward. You're going to have people from the ticket office who I always thought this was entertaining. So when the Patriots were doing really well, people from the ticket office would call and be like, okay, you have these season tickets. If you want to renew, they're going to get hiked. You're going to pay $30,000, $25,000 for these season tickets, but we'll give you an opportunity to purchase Super Bowl tickets at X amount down the line, and we'll put you on a payment plan. It becomes it's crazy. It's completely wild. And I think that's what fans are going to experience. If an owner puts a fan base through that, you better be accessible. You better be accessible, and you're going to be hated. If you roll out a new stadium and fans are eyeballs deep in debt to watch a 3-10 team, you're going to be hated. That's the bottom line.
That was Charles Robinson this morning on Robbie and Rexrode. As part of a larger conversation, it was a really interesting interview. I suggest you go back and listen to the whole thing on wherever you get your podcasts. But that part stood out to me. And we talked about this yesterday, Derek, when I put you in charge of, well, I didn't put you in charge, but I made you the senior advisor to Amy Adams Strunk. And we talked about accessibility.
Yes.
And Charles Robinson makes a really good point there. I don't know how much these tickets are going to cost. I've never had season tickets to anything. I understand that the price of these PSLs on top of the tickets is exorbitant. And if you are going to be investing a significant amount of money in a team, because that's what you're doing when you buy these tickets. You're investing in the Titans. And if the owner is not going to address what's been going on with their franchise for the past few years, where it has plummeted to the bottom of the standings over the past 2.5 years, I mean, it's going to, I think it could backfire. I think it could backfire. So what did you make of Charles Robinson's thoughts on Amy Adams Strunk and the fact that she hasn't been accessible to fans and paying for this expensive stadium and all of the things that go into that?
He's spot on. And this is what, and Charles must have been listening to our show yesterday.
He might have been.
Yeah, because this is what I talked about yesterday. Depositing, what the Predators are doing. They're not doing well as a team, but Barry Trotz is depositing into the fan base. That's why he gets out there every week, because if you don't sort of open the door a little bit to the fan base, then you may pay for it down the line, especially when you have those lean years. Every organization has a lean year, 2 or 3. Some get out of their lean years a lot quicker than others. Unlike the Detroit Lions, they were in their lean years for 50 years, damn near, before they actually started, consistently winning. But when you deposit, when you open up or lift up the veil a little bit to get fans to see what's going on, and you are able to explain that, it pays dividends in times like this, because the fans tend to stick with you a little bit longer if you're explaining to them. If you explain to them, I'm in this with you. I feel the same way that you feel. You're upset, I'm upset. When you give that to the fans in some form, they tend to hold on to you a little bit longer. But when you are out of sight, out of mind, they're not going to do that. The first thing they're going to be doing is surrounding you with pitchforks and torches and like, we want you out of here. As an owner, we want a different owner, or we want a different GM, after 1 year or 2 years. That's what happened. You don't see that happening across the Cumberland with the Nashville Predators, even when Poile had that job for a long time. But they seemed a little bit more accessible in a sense, not as accessible as Barry is now, but they did make it a little bit more accessible. The Titans are not doing that. They've never done that in the last 10 years. And now they're not reaping the benefits of having those 3 or 4 great, really good years with Vrabel, because they were insulated. They didn't let anyone in. Now they are paying for it, and they're still not letting anyone in. I spoke about this 2 years ago, a year ago, about, hey, listen, everything is geared toward opening up that stadium. Everything you do is about that stadium, because why? You're asking people to pay a huge and enormous amount of money to sit in those seats. If you're asking me for some money, then you better give me a peek behind the curtain, because I am working as hard as I possibly can throughout the week to provide for my family and to give them at the end of the week some entertainment. And we choose to give you our money as our form of entertainment. And if you can't make your team better, or if you're not giving us a glimpse of what's going on, or if you're not out there telling us, hey, listen, I feel the same way you do, then you're going to be in a position you're in now.
The Titans received approval for what, $1 billion in public funding for this stadium? 1.1, 1.2, something like that. An insane amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're asking the public to help you subsidize this stadium, you better be out there, especially now. And look, when a team is winning, fans are far more forgiving about these sorts of things. They don't care if Amy Adams-Strunk talks when they're winning.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's a bit different. You mentioned the Predators. We've talked about Barry Trotz and being on this station once a week, answering hard questions from Jared Stillman. David Poile, you mentioned David Poile. Now, was David more closely guarded about things than Barry Trotz?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But David Poile would not say the same things that Barry Trotz says.
But he was accessible.
He was accessible. I don't think I ever asked for an interview with David Poile that was turned down.
Mm-hmm.
Would I get what I wanted out of every interview with David Poile? Not always, but he was available. He did answer questions. Sean Henry comes on this station on Chasing Big Joe, I believe every week, if not every week, on a regular basis. The Titans are not doing that. And to Charles's point, if this franchise continues to sink to the depths of the NFL, and we're not hearing from anybody, and it's not just Amy Adams-Strunk. We've talked about this a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We're not hearing from Rand Carthon. We're not hearing from Chad Brinker. We're not hearing from Burke Nihill. And I believe Paul Kuharsky asked Brian Callahan the question earlier this week about how he feels about him being the spokesperson for this organization, having to answer questions that he's probably not in a position to answer. But he said, look, it's part of the job. I talk to ownership. I talk to management all the time. We're in lockstep, yada, yada, yada. But I don't love the optics of it, that the first year head coach is answering questions that someone above him should probably be answering. And that's something that the Titans need to reckon with. It just feels like we can all plead it. You can plead about it. I can plead about it. Gentry Estes wrote a column in the Tennessean today that I thought was well done. It was an open letter to Amy Adams-Strunk about being more accessible, among other things. We can all beg and plead for it, but we've been given zero indication that it's going to happen. And and look, at the same time, what's the way? What do we always say? Well, what's the way to make your voice heard in these situations? With your wallet. Don't go to the games. Don't buy merchandise. But you know what? There are still enough people that I don't see that are going to keep going.
Mhm.
That I don't think it's going to make a dent in their fortunes.
Well, listen, the NFL understands this. They are probably close to recession proof as there is in this country. The NFL is probably more recession proof than any other business in this country that is not ran by the government in a sense. It's, in regards to that of Wall Street. We saw it. We saw it with the pandemic. The NFL still operated. Yeah, they probably didn't have a lot of people in the stands, but you know what? People still watched. And that's what I think the NFL understands more than anything. And people are not realizing that. Just because they don't get your money at the gate doesn't mean they're not getting your money. Just because you now they would love for you to show up at the games. And I think if I recall, I think, gate money is more so of the owners. If I'm correct, I could be completely wrong on that one. But I think when it comes to, game day gate money, I think that's different from the money that they negotiated with these broadcast companies, ESPN or Fox. I think it's separate from that. So listen, they understand that we've been through a pandemic where no one can show up. No one could show up at the stadium. But you know what? We still played our games. And you know what you did? You still watched it. You know what happened to us? We still got our money from that television.
Right. The NFL is not a gate-driven league.
Exactly. It's not.
The NHL is a gate-driven league. You need butts and seats at hockey games.
So
you don't need them in the NFL.
So when you're not butt-driven, if you're not a butt-driven or a people-driven in your stadium business, then you can probably do what the Titans are doing. Hey, listen, I talk when I feel like talking, or I talk when I want to talk. Why? Because, hey, I may lose some of y'all in the process, but then there are 100 people waiting to take your spot. These are these NFL companies. This is how probably they think, these owners. If you leave, I got 100 more people waiting on the wait list.
Absolutely.
To take your place. So we don't want you to leave, but if you leave, then okay. But I am not going to cave in as an owner and start talking every other week. And that's not what we're asking her to do. We're just asking her, when situations like a Kevin Byard happen, somebody needs to talk other than the head coach. When you trade away one of your cornerstones, one of your leaders in your organization, you trade him away and we hear nothing from nobody at the time. You trade away one of your best receivers, even though he was getting older and it probably was the right thing to do considering where you were as a team. No one spoke. No one came out. The owner, no one came out and said, hey, listen, this is why we did. They left it up to the head coach. But those were not head coach's decisions.
Right. The perfect example is when the Titans fired Mike Vrabel. Ran Carthon addressed reporters, and Ran Carthon was open about the fact that he didn't really have any say in the matter. But so why is he answering those questions? We need to hear from the person who actually handed the pink slip to Mike Vrabel.
And those are things that the fan base, when you're not winning, those are things that the fan base look at. They look at, okay, you fired a head coach and you didn't speak on it when it happened. Okay, you traded away one of the best players ever to come through your franchise and you don't talk about it. This is a cornerstone now. You didn't sign arguably the third best player, in my opinion, the third best player ever to walk into this organization as a Tennessee Titan, and you didn't say anything about it. I'm talking about Derrick Henry, because I say Steve, Eddie, then Derrick, and you didn't say anything about it. Like, who does that? Like, what organization does that when a cornerstone of your team, this guy has been an epitome of who you want your organization to be, and you didn't speak on it when y'all decided not to sign him to a extension or sign him to another contract? Fans probably were not mad in a sense that they probably understood. Some understood that, okay, he's getting a little bit older. We got to do some things. We may have to let him go. But to not speak on it, I think when it happened, I think that was, You dropped the ball on that. You dropped the ball on the Kevin Byard thing. You dropped the ball on the DeAndre Hopkins trade. When is the owner going to say when it's a critical moment in your franchise, a player being traded, a player being released, or something happens? When is the owner going to say, you know what, Rand, I got this. Callahan, I got this. Let me speak on these, because these guys were critical components in what we were doing. They were part of an AFC championship game. They went to the AFC championship. This team did, and these guys were a part of it. Now we no longer have them on our team, and these weren't just Scarbinis, as Jared loves to say. He wouldn't say it about those guys, but these aren't Scarbinis that you just pick up and say, "Oh, we don't need you." This was Kevin Byard. This was Derrick Henry. Two guys that helped in that run of successful seasons that you had. And then DeAndre Hopkins, who you coveted in free agency, and you went out and you paid him the money that nobody else was going to pay him. And you can't speak on that. No one can speak on that when it happens. That's the part that fans are disappointed about, and the losing.
Before we head to break, Neely on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. I've been a Predator season ticket holder for 10 years. I have 2 seats in the 300 level and pay $625 a month for 12 months out of the year. It essentially equates to $90 per seat per game. Everyone sitting around me now is paying like $12 to get in, and they sit right next to me. It's getting a little frustrating, but I'm still in for now, largely due to how transparent they are. I definitely wouldn't be sticking around with the Titans in their situation. And look, I think that's an interesting point from Neely. I get it. You're paying a lot of money for season tickets. The Predators aren't playing well. People are buying tickets on the secondary market for a fraction of what you're paying, but you're sticking by it for now because the Predators.
Oh, he's talking about the Predators.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
But he's saying that Neely is saying that they are standing by for now because the Predators are being transparent about what's going on.
Exactly.
615-737-1025. We'll continue to take your thoughts on this and more. Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst, will join us coming up next. But before we do that, join Jared Stillman, Chris Sanders, and Derek Mason downtown at JBJ's in Nashville this Sunday for the pregame show from 9:30 to 11:30. They will break down the Titans' Week 15 matchup against the Bengals and give you the latest updates before the game. The pregame show is presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment, Sundeck Nashville, Sloan's Motorcycle ATV, and award-winning Blue Note Juke Joint and Blue Note Crossroads Bourbon. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Derek Mason and Adam Vingan here with you, joined on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, by ESPN NFL analyst Tim Hasselbeck. Tim, it was made official late yesterday. Bill Belichick returning to coaching, of course, not in the NFL, at the college ranks at the University of North Carolina. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. My gut feeling tells me, for whatever reason, I'm not sure how well this is going to go. When you think about Bill Belichick in the college ranks, what gives you confidence there in terms of his transition? And maybe what would give you some pause about Bill Belichick at UNC?
Yeah, I think the confidence would be that he's going to generate a massive amount of excitement for North Carolina and their football program, which usually means they're going to raise a massive amount of money. And in the current landscape of college football, I mean, there's basically no salary cap, and, it's about, essentially buying the best players. And I think the experience between Belichick and, the people that he's going to put around him, the ability to evaluate talented players, and then a desire for guys to go somewhere to think that, hey, that's their best path to the National Football League. Yeah, I think all of those things end up being attractive about, going to UNC. It's a cool school associated with the Jordan brand. I think there's a lot of it that guys that age will be enticed by. And then also when you look at the conference, like you're not going to the SEC, you're going to the ACC, which, some of the traditional powerhouses that have been in that conference, aren't great. I mean, look at Florida State this past year. So like the idea of like, hey, could you go to that conference and win it? That's certainly a possibility. So I think those are the things, on the positive side of it. And then I think the question that you would have on the flip side of it would be, guys can leave there too, right? So, just because you can add players doesn't mean that you'll always be able to keep them. And so that ends up, probably be a challenge, but that's a challenge for every coach.
So I actually saw this clip not too long ago from Cliff Kingsbury, and he was asked about Bill Belichick moving to the college ranks. And he said, quote, "I can't see my man going into any home visits or doing cocktail hours." And that's part of this as well.
But I don't think, I think that I think recruiting, like if people think that like Nick Saban, was popping around, living rooms around the country, like he wasn't. Maybe once upon a time he did, but like, I think that, listen, head coaches are closers, and there's also restrictions on when they can go places. Like he's going to close the deal on campus. Like that's what Belichick's going to do.
So the Titans, it was a formality, but the Titans losing to the Jaguars over the weekend eliminated them from playoff contention. I think we can learn a lot about a team when they are officially out of the playoff race as we can while they're still in the hunt. Specifically with Brian Callahan, first-year head coach, having to navigate all of this. What do you think we will learn about Callahan as a coach over the next 4 weeks now that the Titans, in terms of seeding and making the playoffs, do not have anything to play for in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, it's a different way to have to motivate your team. But I'm gonna say it's easy, but I don't think it's hard what the messaging needs to be. And I think what we'll see is, basically him, saying, look, you not only are auditioning for your, job here, your livelihood here, but the rest of the National Football League. And I think we'll see him give other people opportunities to prove that they belong. I would expect the bottom of the roster, to churn, in terms of, other practice squads and maybe even at times, people off the street that are probably on a short list, to see guys play. Because there is, still, roughly a month or so of football left that you'll get a pretty good chance to look at some guys. So I think that will happen. But, I think in terms of, I don't know. I think in some ways, learning about him as a coach, I know for a fact, he's been around the game too long. Like, I know he's a good football coach. I know he knows a lot of football. I know that he's really smart, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And I think really for him, probably just, how he navigates through the negativity is probably the thing that you maybe, understand or learn about him the most. And look, he's been through it before. And so, I think that he'll handle that well.
We'll talk with Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst and head coach of the Innsworth Tigers. Let's go back to the Bill Belichick thing for a minute, Tim. Now, obviously, him going into North Carolina and what was said that he came in with this big binder of things that, he would like to have if he was going to be the head coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels. And a part of it was running it more like a professional league or a feeder league for the NFL. And this is what I have been saying for a long time. Like, listen, a lot of these coaches are not there to get you prepared for the NFL. They're there to win football games, period. And that's what they're going to do. And if you turn out to be a great prospect, then that's great for them, because now they get to use that as a feather in their cap when they're recruiting. But they're not really there to get you ready for the NFL, because they know every kid is not made for the NFL. They're just there to win games. But it seems like Coach Belichick wants this feeder league to sort of, he has this template of what he wants as a feeder league, and not just on the field, but also in the classroom. Classes that these individuals take, more geared toward things you're going to experience in life after playing football. So if this model does work, do you think you will see more NFL head coaches or just more coaches sort of go the way Bill Belichick wants to go?
Well, I mean, here's what I think. I think it depends on the school. Like, Jeff Hafley was the head coach at Boston College and realized he wasn't going to get the resources that he was going to need to be successful. So he left to be a defensive coordinator at the Green Bay Packers. Like, I think it depends on the school, and I think it depends on the resources that you're going to get. If you're going to pay Bill Belichick $10 million a year, and then you're going to, quadruple his NIL, money to spend on players, like, yeah, that's attractive, I think, for a lot of coaches. And I would just say this, like, I think the idea of, like, hey, running it, like, hey, this is a preparatory program for the National Football League, like, I mean, I think that the college football has just been that anyway, to an extent, not in every realm, but like, Belichick doesn't care. I don't think Bill Belichick cares about preparing people for life beyond North Carolina. I'm sorry. I don't.
You just think that's in there just because.
Yeah, I think he cares about winning football games. I think he cares about going in and being like, yep, Mac Brown is in the Hall of Fame, and won a national championship at Texas, couldn't win here. And guess what I did? I just came here and won. Like, I think that's all he cares about. Whether or not, his running back goes and has a great career with, the Houston Texans, like, I don't think he cares unless it somehow benefits the program. Like, I think he's about winning. Like, he's been involved in the game for too long that I think that's what it's about for him. And then especially in this era of college football where there is so much turnover, like listen, I mean, just look at the portal right now. Somebody told me there's like 30,000 people.
Good Lord.
Whatever. Like something crazy number. It can't be 30,000, but like, they're just like the number of people.
It's too many. Let's just say that.
Like that are in the portal, like the churn on your roster. Like, I remember calling an Old Dominion football game 2 years ago. They had 58 new players on their roster at Old Dominion. Like, what? So it's like, it's going to be on every college roster. So like, you're not developing people when they're coming in for 1 or 2 years before they go to the National Football League, or they're in your program for 1 or 2 years. You're not developing people. All you're doing is buying the best player that you can afford. Like, that's all you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I get that part, but obviously Bill thinks that with this model that I guess he presented to North Carolina, and obviously they accepted it, that he could be a true feeder to the NFL. If you want to go to the NFL, I can be a pipeline.
You are a feeder to, and you know who's a feeder to the NFL?
Mm-hmm.
Georgia. You know why? Because they can afford players.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you know why they win? Because they've got amazing players.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's like this, there's no salary cap. So if Bill Belichick can raise more money than any other school in the ACC, then he'll have better players. As long as he evaluates them correctly, he'll have better players than everyone else in the ACC.
Okay, so Tim, think about this for a second, and maybe it's harder to do if you're within a conference like the ACC, Big Ten, because they generate so much money from these companies. What if you're an independent team, like say Notre Dame, where you're not in a conference? I don't think Notre Dame would do this, but I presented to the guys yesterday. What stops now that college football or college sports has gotten where it is? What stops two billionaires from saying, okay, why don't we take over your program? And we do it that way. So now you can be, you're not a part of a conference. And essentially we are your television revenue.
Yeah.
Do you see that ever happen?
I think and I think that, I mean, you've seen these people say that, like, college football is going to get pulled out of the NCAA. Mm-hmm. Look, there are people that are trying to basically say, this becomes minor leagues, and people are going to own them, and the schools are going to essentially license out, their stadium and school logos and stuff like that for a massive piece of the pie, and it's going to be kind of out of their leadership, but they're still going to reap a lot of the money for it. So, so what you're describing is a very similar thing with Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that brand is very different than pretty much every other brand, in college football. But the issue that to get into some of the money, like the issue that the ACC has versus the SEC TV contract is not even close to the SEC TV contract. And so it's a very winnable conference. And if you can generate enough excitement and money to get the premier players that would maybe be going to bigger school. Look at, the receiver at NC State, the receiver at Georgia Tech, like, those guys are going to get paid a massive amount of money by SEC schools to go play there. Like, that's why they're leaving the ACC. But if you could keep that caliber of player in the ACC, as all these other schools are losing all these other ACC schools are losing their players to SEC schools that have bigger budgets, then, like, now you have a proven very good coach coaching, better players in the conference. Like, you're going to end up in the college football playoff and have a chance. Like, I think that's the simple math on it for Belichick.
Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst, joining us here on DVD. Tim, great stuff as always. We'll chat next week.
All right, sounds good. See you guys.
Yep.
Tim Hasselbeck joining us on the program, 615-737-1025. We'll continue the Bill Belichick conversation on the other side. But before we do, 1025 The Game and Cromwell Media have teamed up with the Nashville Predators for Coats for Kids, benefiting the Boys and Girls Club of Middle Tennessee. Starting on Monday, you can donate new or slightly used coats at the Game Studio and at the Fordyce Centers in Antioch, Bellevue, and Clarksville. Also on Friday, December 20th, the Game will be at the Fordyce Center in Bellevue from 9 to 6, taking donations, giving away swag, and tickets to an upcoming Preds game. Coat donations will also be accepted at the Predators home game at Bridgestone Arena on Saturday, December 21st. For more information, visit thegamenashville.com/coats.
Hey, this is Derek Mason, and you heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff at Cool Springs MD for some time. If you set out to lose some weight, chances are it's not your first time setting a resolution to shed some extra pounds, only to come up a few short. But at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss. Their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you and you only. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
Tune into the Chase and Big Joe show tomorrow from 9 to 11 for your chance to qualify to win a pair of tickets in the all-inclusive Eurostone Club at Bridgestone Arena and see Brett Eldridge live on Friday, December 20th. The Brett Eldridge ticket contest is supplied by Green Trees, a family-owned cannabis company. Check them out online at greentreeswithaz.com. Derek Mason and Adam Vingan here with you. Let's continue this Bill Belichick conversation a little bit more, Derek. So the news, we talked about it yesterday when it was starting to leak, but it's been made official since that Bill Belichick will coach the University of North Carolina Tar Heel football program. I believe the contract is 5 years at $10 million per season. And I heard what Tim was saying about the positives and negatives of the Bill Belichick experience. I have a hard time imagining that. Look, he was a coach for how many years? 50 years? He was a coach for a very long time. And he spent the past year on every television platform known to man. And to his credit, he's actually done a pretty good job at it. You know, he actually does have a bit of personality, which he did not show us during his time with the Patriots. But it takes me back to one thing that the University of North Carolina can give him that no NFL team was willing to give him: control. That's it. There are no teams in the NFL that are willing to give Bill Belichick the free reign that he had with the New England Patriots. Case in point, last year, how many coaching openings were there in the NFL? Six, 7?
I believe, yeah.
One team, the Atlanta Falcons, seriously interviewed Bill Belichick. And even they decided that they didn't want a part of the Bill Belichick experience. He goes to North Carolina. I'm sure the particulars in his contract. He can rule the school, basically. He is the emperor of the North Carolina football program. And look, when it comes to recruiting, he can walk into a 5-star recruit's living room and just plop his diamond-encrusted hand on the table. Look at all these Super Bowl rings that I have. I have to fit them on 2 hands. That's how many I have. I know Tom Brady. Want me to give you a call? You want me to have him give you a call? We can FaceTime with him right now. Well, maybe. I don't know. Their relationship is kind of, either way.
I don't think Tom vouching, and he's a Michigan guy. I wouldn't go that far to say he would vouch for.
But he has, look, we know that Bill Belichick has the record and the championships. They speak for themselves. But I don't see it working out. And look, again, I will put my bias out there. If this blows up spectacularly in Carolina's face, I will love it. There is not an athletic program on the face of the earth that I detest more than the University of North Carolina. That's what happens when you're born in Durham, North Carolina. So if this blows up in Carolina's face, I'm not going to be mad about it. But I just have a hard time seeing Bill Belichick doing some of the things that college coaches are going to be required to do. And Derek, you made a good point during the break. What's one thing that college kids can do that professional athletes can't? They don't have contracts. If things aren't working well at Carolina, your star player can say, I'm out of here. And there's not a gosh darn thing you can do about it. And I think that's going to be a proverbial slap in the face for Bill Belichick when it comes to that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this all works for Coach Belichick and whoever his staff will be, because I'm sure he will have at least 40 people on his staff, coaches, and anybody else that will help him facilitate his vision for the North Carolina Tar Heels. Listen, do I think that it will work from a schematic standpoint, from a managerial standpoint? I think it has a possibility to work, because one thing I do know is that kids want to be coached and they want discipline. Now, there are some that are out there that, you might have to give them a little bit of tough love to kind of nudge them. But I think just about every kid out there, athletic, what do they call them now? I just lost train of thought in regards to what I call them. Oh, student athletes. So I think there are majority of the student athletes that are coming in, they want to be coached, and they want to be coached hard. And when you got an opportunity to play for a guy like Bill Belichick, if you're one of those guys that like to be coach hard, then he's going to be the place for you, because he's going to coach you hard, but you know why he's coaching you hard. And as long as he shows that he wants to, it worked for Nick Saban for this reason. Nick showed that he really cared for those kids. Nick showed that when I was in Michigan State. Nick tells the story, Coach Saban tells the story about Muhsin Muhammad, and many people would have just discarded Muhsin, and he didn't do that. He stuck with him, and it all worked out for Muhsin and for Coach Saban in that regard of giving guys an opportunity to work themselves through whatever problem they're going through and not just abandoning them. So Coach Saban pinpointed that early in his career. Early. Like, I got to care about these kids first, because if I don't show that I care about them, they're only going to hold on for so long. That's the thing that I'm interested in about Bill Belichick. After individuals go through his program, they leave. What are they saying about Bill Belichick after that? Because you ask just about any Alabama guy and guys that Nick Saban has coached at the college, we all say sort of the same type thing. Like, it's across the board. Yeah, he was a hard ass at times, but he showed that he cared too. That is the thing that Bill Belichick has to prove. We know you can coach. We know you can be a hard butt at times. We know that. We know you just a curmudgeon, you barely like talking, at least not to the media anyway. But do you love my kid? Do you truly care about my kid outside of football? If you show that like Nick Saban did, or like some of these other coaches did, it seemed like Kirby is sort of down that same line. And there's probably plenty other coaches out there. I remember Coach D'Antonio at Michigan State. He was the same way. That's why guys still love him. If Bill Belichick can prove that, he's going to win. That's why Deion Sanders is so successful now. It took some time, but that's why he's showing success now, because he genuinely shows that he cares about these kids and not just them, on the field. So if Bill Belichick can prove that, he's going to be successful.
615-737-1025. I feel like we've seen enough of these NFL coaches going to college thinking they're going to change everything, and it hasn't worked. We mentioned during the break, Bill Callahan tried it, didn't work. Charlie Weiss,
it didn't work at Notre Dame.
Herm Edwards,
it didn't work at Arizona State.
Bill Belichick is a monolith.
But I can say this, Adam. What if they would have went in with the same demands as Bill Belichick and got those demands? Would it have worked with them? Because Bill's asked for everything, I assume. He's asking for total control of the football program. No meddling from nobody else. This is mine. If those other coaches would have went in with that same sort of, I don't want to say ultimatum, but essentially that's what it is. Do you think they would have been successful too?
That's a good question, but I will be watching very closely to see how this goes in Chapel Hill. 615-737-1025. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game. D-Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Derek Mason and Adam Vingan here with you. Willie Donick will join us momentarily. We are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Speaking of Willie Donick, who is in Dallas with the Predators, they're preparing to take on the Dallas Stars tonight. Puck drop at 7, pregame at 6, right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Roman Josi is day-to-day with his lower body injury. He is out tonight. So no Roman Josi in Dallas tonight for the Predators. But according to Willie, Ryan O'Reilly, who's missed the past few games, and Gus Nyquist, who was out with illness the other night, are back in. So it appears that Ryan O'Reilly will return from injury. Gus Nyquist will return from illness. But Roman Josi is out day-to-day with the lower body injury he suffered the other night against the Calgary Flames. So a bit of good news, a bit of bad news. The Predators will try to get back on the winning track. It's been a minute. The Predators have lost 8 consecutive games, but they will try to defeat the Dallas Stars tonight, and we'll get more into the Predators and the NHL as a whole with Elliot Freeman of Sportsnet coming up at 1 o'clock. So, Derek, Titans and Bengals this weekend. We know where Brian Callahan came from. He came from Cincinnati, and I believe it's Paul. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. Paul Dehner of The Athletic, who reports on the Cincinnati Bengals, wrote a story about the relationship between Brian Callahan and Zach Taylor, the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals. It's a really good story. So if you subscribe to The Athletic, I highly recommend this story. And as I was reading it, there were a couple of passages that stuck out to me. And I think the same passages stuck out to you. So I want to share them. So Paul Dehner writes, quote, "The Bengals went 6-25-1 in the first 2 years with Taylor and Callahan leading the ship. Underneath the losses, they saw the progress. They felt the culture was changing, the talent level rising, but understood what that record meant in 31 other cities. Mike Brown, the owner of the Bengals, believed and allowed more time. The decision changed the course of Callahan's career as the Bengals reached the Final Four in back-to-back seasons." Dehner continues, "Cincinnati operates differently, a way often scrutinized. But for someone who went through it, the opportunity to be in the center circle of all the decisions, from scouting to free agency to regular conversations with ownership about the issues of the day, left a lasting impression on his development and his heart," meaning Callahan. And Callahan, this is the quote, "I felt the investment. I felt the care. I felt the patience. It's rare in the NFL anymore to have somebody have perspective and have patience. I always felt like there was joy in that for him too, to see people grow. I thought that was awesome. He's such a rarity, I think, in the NFL because of how long he has done it, the perspective from years and years and years of doing it, the pride he felt running the football team. I just think there is something really cool about that." So that passage in this story from Paul Dehner of The Athletic stuck out to me. And when you walked in this morning, you told me what when you heard that section of the story?
I told you basically that was, a plea to Amy, to be patient. That's all that article was about to me. At least the first half of it was being patient. Now he talked in the second half about his relationship with Zach Taylor, and how he would call and how he wished nothing but the best for them and the coaching staff and the quarterback. But I think a lot of it had to do with, listen, in the interview process, you relayed to me that in a sense you would be patient. You knew that this job that I was taking was going to require some patience. You knew it. I knew it. I looked at the roster from afar, and I came in with my questions, because I'm sure Brian Callahan, as detailed as he is, he came in with a booklet of questions, because he talked about how his note taking has went through the roof now. He's become an expert at note taking, basically. So I'm sure he came in with this set of questions that he wanted to ask the owner. And I'm sure one of those questions were probably not phrase it the way I'm going to phrase it, because I'm phrasing it basically as blunt, hey, listen, This is what it is. He probably went in there and said, hey, listen, are you going to show patience? Essentially, that's what he said. Are you going to show me some patience? Because I've looked at your roster, and whereas there are some players we can build on, but it's going to take a lot more. So are you willing to patiently wait for that? Because that's what Mike Brown did with Zach Taylor, and see where they're at now. I know this season isn't an indication, but that's a good team. They just dealt with a lot of injuries this past season, but that is a good team. So are you going to show the patience that Mike Brown showed, or are you going to be, this fly by the seat of your pants type of owner? And if it doesn't go right the first year, then I'm gone. Which one are you going to be? Because if I'm going to take this job, I've looked at your roster, and it's going to take a minute to get this roster and to get this team to be a consistently winning team. I just think that was just for me, it was reiterating, what we talked about in the meeting, the patience that you need to have in order to allow this team to go through what they're going through now, but knowing that if we stick with the process, we will come out of it better on the other side. That's what that article was about to me, showing that, Mike Brown, this is and I say mom and pop, but basically that's what it is at a exacerbated level, because they've owned that team since its inception. That's what the Tennessee Titans are as well. This is a homegrown business. And are you going to show the patience that Mike Brown showed, and it's paying off for them? Maybe not this season, but 2 years after Zach Taylor took the job, we were in the Super Bowl 2 to 3 years later. That can be the same thing here in Nashville if you show patience. So are you still willing, amidst all of this and the fans screaming and yelling, are you still willing to be patient with me and my coaching staff?
And I understand, and I'm sure we're going to get a text or a call to this effect, that one of the big reasons for the turnaround, they had Joe Burrow.
Yes.
And they had Jamar Chase. That helps tremendously. But as you know, Derek, it's about forming a culture. And I thought there was another interesting part of this story by Paul Dehner in The Athletic. He talked to Tyler Boyd, who, of course, followed Brian Callahan from Cincinnati to Tennessee. And Boyd was talking about how, many of the details of how Callahan does things are the same from Cincinnati to Tennessee. And I thought this part was interesting as well. Everything revolves around becoming a connected team. That takes time and can take losses and off seasons, both of which Taylor and Callahan navigated together in Cincinnati. At the end of the 2020 season, they saw a team start to turn the corner under the surface despite an ugly record and grow into a Super Bowl run the next year. He, meaning Boyd, I believe in this scenario, sees the same signs of that with the Titans despite a 3-10 mark.
Yeah, I can understand, but the caveat of all of that is, like you said, they had their quarterback. There was no doubt in that building when Joe Burrow walked through those doors, they didn't believe he's our guy. Nobody questioned it. And he hadn't even taken a snap. Nobody questioned whether Joe Burrow was going to be that dude. Everybody felt he was. So that's one big sort of, how do we build an organization? How do you build it quickly? That was one of those things that were off the table because you already had your quarterback. You got your franchise quarterback. You walked in and you were able to draft your guy. Okay? I think he was there the first year Zach Taylor became coach, or it might have been a year after that. It might have been a year after that because the first year I think they drafted T. Higgins. He was a part of that draft. Or no, T. Higgins and Joe Burrow might have been a part of the same draft.
Zach Taylor was the coach during Joe Burrow's rookie season.
So you were able to go in there and pick your guy. That is essentially what what Brian Callahan is saying, but he's missing that key part, the quarterback. And that's why I said if there's still a question mark about where you go at that position, then you need to get somebody else. Because yes, you want the owner to show patience, but if you're not making the moves that would give an owner, the feeling of, okay, I'm gonna be patient. I see the moves he's making. Matter of fact, he has his quarterback. Now we just got to build around him. If you're not doing that, if you don't have that guy, then that patience wears thin. They got to get them a quarterback that they have no question marks about. Right now, there's question marks about Will Levis. So if you want to truly gain the patience, make sure you get a quarterback that is patient worthy enough. And I'm not sure Will Levis is patient worthy enough past this season.
The one thing I wonder about with Brian Callahan, and I read it in the story, and we read the quote from Callahan on Mike Brown, the Bengals owner. The one thing that I wonder about when it comes to Brian Callahan, we talked about this the other day. Brian Callahan was asked about his job security. I think we can all agree that the idea of the Titans firing Brian Callahan independent of making a move in management is just ludicrous. I can't imagine a scenario where the Titans fire Brian Callahan but retain the management they currently have. Perhaps the Titans move off of Ran Carthon and or Chad Brinker. And then usually, if they were to hire a new GM, that person would want their own coach. So Brian Callahan in that scenario would be collateral damage. He would lose his job because his bosses lost their jobs, which is less of a reflection of Callahan than it is of the management. And that's the one thing that I kind of wonder about. Like, I hear what Callahan is saying, and I generally agree. Like, I know that this team has not played well, and we've seen some good and some bad from Brian Callahan. If you had to ask us to grade his performance thus far, it would be barely passing, probably at best. But will he get the opportunity? If the Titans make another management change, that could mean another coach. So I'm wondering if all of that stuff that he said in that article, it sounds really good. And I generally agree with the premise. And I think that I know you can fire coaches after one season in the NFL. We went through some of them in recent years. But like, I don't see Callahan. I don't see Callahan as the primary issue. And I just wonder if things continue to go the way they've been going. If Amy Adams-Strunk makes a change in management, then he may be out on his butt just as a result of that.
Well, if you're making a change in management, you got to make a change at the coaching.
Right. We've seen what happens here when a new general manager comes in and says, "Hey, work with this guy." Doesn't usually work out well.
It didn't work out well because they end up work with this guy. They end up firing that guy.
Yes.
Right. The next very season after that season. So if you're going to change management, which I don't think she will do, I would be surprised if she did it. If you're going to change management, you might as well change the head coach as well. You might as well just start all over with a clean slate. Because what happens then now is, okay, you keep the head coach, the GM comes in. What if it doesn't get better? Now the GM is looking to fire the head coach. Now he finds this guy. Then it's just this repeated over and over and over again. So to me, if you're going to fire one, you need to fire all and just start over again. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think she's going to fire either. I think, and I believe she's going to be patient with this, because patience to me isn't after 1 year, considering what has happened with this team, the injuries and everything else. If you choose to go away from the coach and not the GM, then I just think you're setting yourself up for more failure moving forward, or you're setting yourself up to be a not stable or unstable franchise, which many people think they are. I don't think they are an unstable franchise. I think they're just going through the ups and the downs that majority of the franchises in the National Football League, with the exception of probably 3 or 4, they all go through it. So I think she needs to be patient. But how long Patience to me, I think next year. If it doesn't seem to be changing next year, then I think you got to move away from all parties.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens at the end of the season. I think Callahan has shown some promise, but I do think he has been hindered by the roster that he's been given. And it's an interesting dichotomy when you're comparing a coach and okay, well, is he getting the most out of the roster? Well, is the roster he has, how much can he get out of it?
Yeah.
And I do think that Callahan has been hindered by some of that. Look, for example, it's not Brian Callahan's fault. This team doesn't have a right tackle. Now, they've rotated through multiple guys, but I don't put that on Brian Callahan. He's trying to find the solution. He hasn't been able to find the solution. But to me, that's not a Brian Callahan issue. I think we may have overstated the impact that Bill Callahan would have on the offensive line. But I don't put all of that at Brian Callahan's feet because he wasn't provided with competent right tackle play. And I would like to see Callahan get another shot. I really would. But I wonder if he might just be, as I said, collateral damage, if management makes a change. 615-737-1025. It's time for Silly Underdog Picks. It is time for our first part, at least, of our college football bowl draft. And we'll explain how we're going to go about it. Coming up next, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game.
There's no need to fear. Underdog is here.
D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, Chase McCabe in studio as well as we prepare for silly underdog picks. We now turn it over to the commissioner, Willie Donick.
Willie, oh Willie G, Willie G. Ooh, oh, Willie, oh,
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls,
Commissioner.
to Silly Underdog Picks 2024. The season is winding down. It is now time for a brand new phase of this competition that dates back to 1994, which makes it
The Pearl Anniversary.
the Pearl Anniversary of this fine contest. That is brought to you by Volunteer Hose and Gasket. For the first time in the competition's history, we have a college football playoff that consists of 12 teams. So there are more games to pick, and there are still a gazillion bowl games like there always have been. So traditionally, we have a 3-round bowl draft. This year, we're going to split it into two-pick drafts. So we will pick 2 games today, which will go from now through the first round of the college football playoffs. So the 4 games are going to be played on Friday and Saturday, December 20th and 21st. So each player will pick 2 games. I'm coming at you today from Dallas, Texas, not very far from Jerry's World, which, of course, has hosted a few games like this in the past. Of course, this first round will be home sites. So all of the higher seeded teams will play at home. You can pick these games. You can pick the Army-Navy game this weekend and any of the bowl games that are being played between now and December the 21st. Then on Monday, December 23rd, we will pick 2 more games, and those will be played from that night all the way through the end of the college football playoff. So that's how we're going to roll. And so let's introduce the panel. Coming in on the horn from Montgomery Bell Academy is the leader in the competition right now for the regular season, and he's got a sizable lead. Just trying to play out and finish strong. That would be the Forever Titan and ex-Buckeye, Chris Sanders. I say ex because I'm wondering if he's had any contact from the Alumni Association since the Ohio State-Michigan game.
No, man, they took my jersey out of the trophy case. I mean, it was that bad. But other than that, it's good. Hey, Adam,
they took him off the email list.
Adam.
They took him off the email list. Don't worry about
Hey, my pick won last week. I'm just saying.
Adam, congratulations.
I'm not falling for this again, Chris. It happened once. I'm not doing it again.
Okay. I'm just messing with you, brother. Good try. As long as you give it your all, that's all that matters.
That's right.
Also joining us would be the suit, Chase McCabe, who is fighting for at least second place, looking for a miracle here. We'll see how he plays it. You've got 4 games to pick from. Chase, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic, fellas. We'll see. We'll see what we can do.
Yes, I'm in Dallas where the baseball winter meetings are going on, and Max Fried is no longer a Brave. I hate to inform you that happened a couple days ago.
I don't know what you're talking about.
We don't discuss that.
We don't recognize that name. Not sure who that is.
He's a Yankee. He's a Yankee.
Not familiar. I know. I saw the director. I saw George the other night at the Preds game, and I was like, Max Fried, and we both just kind of shook our head. I mean, I think he got good for him for getting the money. I think it's an overpay, but I think they're all overpays. Your Mets just overpaid Juan Soto, but
I would say just a tad. Just
a what?
Just a tad.
That's the price of doing business in baseball these days. But yeah, I hate to see Max go, but we'll see. See what the Braves do. They haven't done anything to this point, but we'll see.
Willie, I just want to clarify before we make our picks. So the games that we can select today have to be played through December 21st. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Got it. Just making sure I have my picks in order. So these are games played through the first round of the college football playoff.
Yes.
Okay.
Any game that has been played, that will be played.
Okay.
So let's quickly recap as Adam and Derek.
Why do we have to recap?
Down.
It's over with now.
Well,
the playoff is now. That's all we
Just
care
for
about.
bookkeeping purposes, for the listeners that lean on this every week, they love this competition.
Nobody leans on Chris
we like-
winning. Goodness.
So here's how it went down in week 15.
No.
Adam, who just was already referred to this, he did get a win. He went kind of short. He went
Yeah, hey, there's static, Willie. We can't hear you.
it was kind of a push. The short yardage situation. The sneak. He took Clemson, just a 2-point dog against SMU.
Oh.
And as we know,
2 points.
Clemson had full control of the game for a while. Then SMU made a great comeback, only to have Clemson kick a 50-plus yard field goal on the last play of the game after a big kickoff return. So SMU messed that up. SMU, of course, lives to tell about it. They are in the playoffs, as is Clemson with the win. And so Adam picks up the deuce. And he was the only player to win because D. Mace had Montana. He went for the Grizzlies, not Joe Montana, but the Grizzlies, a huge underdog at South Dakota State. They got waxed. In fact, Adam, you got an amusing text from Derek.
Yeah.
He thought the score was reversed. He thought he had a big win.
I looked at the wrong game, actually. I looked at the wrong week of the game. And I'm like, I won. And I'm like, Adam was like, huh? No, you didn't. And I had to go back. I was like, oh, I did. Yeah,
I think my exact words were, get out of here with that nonsense. I think that's exactly what I said.
Can't confirm.
Get out of here with that nonsense.
I can't swear that Derek tried to slip one past the commissioner there, but
He'd
might have
never
just
do
been-
that.
It might have just
I would
been,
never do that.
he smiles, looks at you. Hey, I think I won. He tried to slip it past me,
Dang it.
thinking that I wasn't paying attention. You lost.
Well, if you don't try, you ain't trying to win.
Yeah.
If you don't try to slide one in there, you ain't trying to win. man.
Or as Chase will appreciate, as the late great Eddie Guerrero would say, if you're not cheating, you're not trying, which is what
That's
Derek was
very
trying
true.
to do.
Hey man, just trying to get closer and closer to Chris Sanders. That's all.
You got to do the
Well,
dance.
speaking of Chris Sanders, Chris had to kick off a little bit early. And no truth to the rumor, he did have a very important place he had to be, and it was not that he was trying to duck under the criticism of picking against Ohio State
was
the week
close.
before. But he had David, our fine producer, pick UNLV, a 4-point dog at Boise State on the blue field. But
Oh,
the
my
Broncos
goodness.
took care of business. They won easy. They beat the Rebels for the second straight time this year, and they get a bye in the college football playoff. So Chris stays at 79, but still comfortably ahead.
Well, comfortable. Hey, kind of cushiony. Hey, D-Mace, how we doing over there?
Hey, is somebody talking? Is somebody talking?
I think a mosquito's like by you right now.
I just hear this. That's all I hear.
Just hear like a chihuahua. Is that
Yeah.
what he is?
I'm just like I'm like Charlie Brown listening to my teacher over the phone.
Oh,
Wah,
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 wah.
Chase McCabe had the next pick. He took Villanova, another game going on in the FCS bracket in the first round. Villanova, a 7-point dog. No, this was not a basketball game. They were a dog at Incarnate Word down in San Antonio, and Villanova, they did come up short. They've been eliminated, and Incarnate Word has moved on in the bracket, so Chase comes up empty. The People did get a win with Georgia, 2.5-point dog against Texas in the SEC championship game. So that was a smart move, and the People pick up their 5th win of the year, and they get to 17. So here are the standings after the regular season. 15 games. Chris Sanders, 5 wins and 79 points. 79. D-Mace and Chase tied for second, 29.5. Chase 4-11, D-Mace 3-12. And then Adam also 3-12 with 26. So the race for second is right
Way to
there.
go,
But Chris would
Adam.
have to really blow this
Can
thing.
you repeat Jason Derek's score again?
What,
Because
huh?
Derek said
Huh?
something I couldn't understand.
What'd you say? Huh?
How many points do they have?
No, we forgot about that. You just in third. Don't worry about it.
I just want to look. I know I took a. It was a close game, but I hit a single. I'm inching closer to Chase and Derek to make it a little bit more interesting for second place.
It's right there. It's there for the take. And so the big news of the week really is that somebody for the People is going to the Yacht Rock.
Finally.
Wow,
Finally.
finally.
That is
Thank
huge.
you.
And I
They
forget
can
who it
review
was. I didn't write that down the name, but that person is very lucky because I watched the Yacht Rock documentary on
Mhm.
HBO. It is fantastically done.
Well, they need to
Really
watch it
well
before they go.
Oh yes, I would very much recommend that.
Mhm.
Watch the doc on HBO before you go to that concert. All right, it's time for the bowl draft part 1. Now, Adam, how are we doing this? Do we want to take the break early, or do we want to get through the first round of the draft? How
Let's do the first round. We'll take a break, come back to the second round to get the people's pick. But are we good? We're going to do it in the snake draft order, right? In order of
It
standing.
will be a snake draft.
Okay.
And so because Adam is in 4th place at the end of the regular season, he will have the first pick.
Okay.
Chase will pick 2nd. D-Mace 3rd.
boy.
Hold on. How if we got the same amount of points, how is he picking second?
Because you have more wins.
Because
Why am I
Chase has
picking
more
last?
wins. Chase has one more win. That is
Right.
the tiebreaker. The traditional silly
Well, if you
underdog
have
rule.
one more win, I should go because I have one less win, right?
I can't argue
Right?
with the rules, okay?
Right?
The
Am I right?
The commissioner has spoken.
The commissioner, you misspoke, commissioner, because if we're going by, the least amount of points, and then the next requirement is the least amount of wins, right? Got
is
the
actually
commissioner.
correct.
How did-
Got
That is
the
correct.
commissioner.
No one. How did
Yeah.
Jeff Fisher put up with
D-Mace
you?
is actually right. D-Mace is right.
Yeah.
D-Mace is technically in 3rd, which means he will
Yeah.
pick.
Were you
So that is-
were you
that is
this
correct.
annoying in practice?
Absolutely. When I saw something that wasn't right, I had to say something about it.
No, this
Mhm.
time D-Mace is right. He tried to slip past
Oh,
one on
man.
the commissioner over the weekend, but this one he is correct on. I wrote that down wrong.
So I picked 3rd.
Yes, Chase would pick 3rd. Yeah, Chase picks 3rd. And
All
then
right,
Chris Sanders
so-
will have picks 4 and 5, and then we reverse
Wow.
it for the second round.
All right.
Okay, so let's do this. Adam, you will have the first pick in this fine 2-round draft.
All right. I'll make my local homer pick here. Sort of local homer pick.
Don't you do it?
Give me the Volunteers.
Dang it!
Give me the Tennessee Volunteers
Damn you, Vingan.
to defeat Chris Sanders. Well, not really Chris Sanders anymore. They've disowned him.
Yeah, he was going to pick against them anyway.
Take-
Don't worry.
I'm taking the
Yeah, I was.
Volunteers to upset Ohio State in the first round of the playoff. I have Ohio State minus 7.5.
Tennessee is a 7.5-point dog at Ohio State in the Horseshoe in a first-round game that will be played Saturday night, December 21st at 7 o'clock. That could be some really fun stuff. That I don't know what the weather's going to be like. I know it's been cold up in Ohio. You never know what you're going to get. What a great place to have a playoff
I
game.
think the pressure is
So-
going to be on for Ryan Day. I think
yeah.
if this game was reversed, if Ohio State was in Knoxville, I would think that maybe things would be okay. But I think the pressure is going to be on, and I think Tennessee is going to take advantage of it.
I'll be honest, I would have been completely stunned if none of you took that game. I was expecting that one to go off the board early. All right. So that brings us to Derek Mason with his first of 2 picks.
Go green, go white. Oh yeah. I feel rejuvenated now. I'm going to win a playoff version of this contest. All right. I am going with the Big Ten school. I am going
don't do it.
Iowa, Indiana. Indiana over Notre Dame.
Okay.
That's why you wanted that second to last.
No, well, I
pick,
wanted the
Chase.
Vols, but
Oh, yeah, you got it. Yeah. So I'm going with Indiana over Notre Dame.
Indiana is a 7.5-point dog on the road at Notre Dame. So another playoff game off the board. 2 teams that hail from the same state that I don't really remember playing each other very often. But
No.
Indiana at 11-1. The only loss at Ohio State. Notre Dame's only loss against Northern Illinois way back when. Remember, they lost that game. It looked like their season was going in the tank. They have not lost since. So D-Mace has the Hoosiers. That brings us to Chase McCabe, who wanted both of those games. Looks like he had both of those on the radar. Let's see what he comes up with here.
Behold the king, the king of kings. On your knees, dog.
all right. Well, you know what? I need points, and I want I want second place at this point is basically what I'm playing for.
Wow.
So I'm going to go down to Tampa, Florida, the Gasparilla Bowl. Give me Tulane against the Florida Gators. Tulane, a 14-point dog against the Gators.
So I was thinking about this game, except that Tulane's highly touted quarterback is transferring to Duke, and I don't know if he's going to play.
That's not important. It might be a little important.
This is the bowl game that I thought Vanderbilt was going to go to. I was hoping it was going to go to because I really would have loved to have seen them play Tulane. Tulane is a 14-point dog in the Gasparilla Bowl, which will be played at Raymond James Stadium. That's where the Bucks play, and they're taking on the Gators.
Yeah. Speaking of Vandy, Coach Lee said hi. He was on the Chase and Big Joe show earlier today. So
very nice.
He didn't say hi to you, Chris. He said hi to Willie.
Yeah,
Coach of the year, Coach,
yes.
Clark Lee, I believe. Right?
Yes.
Oh, congrats.
SEC Coach of the Year. All right, that brings us to Chris Sanders for his first of 2 picks in the bowl draft, trying to seal the championship. Here.
Oh my goodness. This is awful. Let me turn my headphones down.
Isn't this your fight song?
Yes.
Why are you
But
mad?
Chris is playing it. No.
Oh, okay.
So I'm turning it down.
You think that's sacrilegious?
Yes, you don't do that. We're not honoring that, okay?
Okay.
I'm sorry.
He did it to try to
Absolutely.
stick the nail, the knife, and I'm not listening to it.
Absolutely. Hey, look, here's my pick. I'm going with Marshall over Army.
Why, Chris?
I don't know. I just want to just rub it in y'all's face.
Wait, what?
Marshall and Army?
That game is not eligible because it's past December 23rd, Chris.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Well, dang, I messed up. Let's go with SMU over Penn State.
I can't stand you. I cannot stand you, Chris Sanders.
I love you, Jay.
You should have picked that one.
How can I count your ways?
I didn't think he would. I thought he.
Oh, absolutely.
SMU is an 8.5-point dog at Penn State in the college football playoff.
Shut up, Chris.
Over at Happy Valley, Beaver Stadium, if you will. James Franklin and Penn State trying to move up, and SMU gets the nod over Alabama, all the controversy, etc. So 3 of the 4 college football playoff games have been picked in the first round. So do we want to take a timeout here, Adam, and come back?
No.
Yes, we will. We will go to break here. Chris Sanders will pick first on the other side. If you want to participate, call 615-737-1025. The Silly Underdog Prize, if you are correct, is a pair of tickets to see Gary Clark Jr. at the Ryman Auditorium on Friday, March 7th. So call in 615-737-1025. We'll do our second round picks and the people's pick coming up next. This is DVD 1025-1063, the game.
Zen Sports just picked their grand prize winner for the November Big Game Sweepstakes, but they're running it back for the month of December. So you got another opportunity. But here's the caveat, people. In November, it was the pros. This December, it's the college edition sweepstakes. This time, instead of going to the big game for the pros, they are giving you a chance to go to the very first big game in the new college football tournament with the grand prize of $10,000 cash and 2 tickets to the biggest college football game of 2025. Yes, the one in Atlanta right down the street, and the ability to earn entries on every bet you place in December. It doesn't get much better than this. If you don't win the grand prize, don't worry about it. You'll also have a shot to win one of 10 small prizes, which grants you $1,000 toward any college football game in 2025. So what are you waiting for? Head to zensports.com/sweepstakes for a full list of the rules and earn a $100 no danger wager on your first bet. That's Zen Sports, where betting just got better. And remember, gambling problems, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 years or older to bet here in Tennessee.
D-Mace, Vingan and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 the game. It is time for round 2 of our College Bowl picks. Chris Sanders, since you just picked last in the first round, you get the first pick in the second round. Please go ahead, sir.
I am going to go with Marshall over Army. Let's go.
You still can't do that.
You can't pick that game.
It's
Wait,
not
I'm
until
confused.
next
Yes.
I'm so
What are you-
confused.
You can pick it next
I'm
Monday.
confused.
A week from
You can
Monday,
only
pick
pick
it.
games that are played through December 21st.
I think Chris
Oh,
is just
okay.
he just knows he's got this thing locked up. He's not even paying
Yes,
attention.
I do. The 21st. Okay, let me look on this doggone thing.
I'm just going to say this. If I have the opportunity to pick Marshall and Army before you next week, I'm going to do it.
Okay. Okay, I'll do this. Okay, can I do 2 bowl games in, sir?
No.
I'm so doggone confused. Somebody pick for me.
You pick a game.
Pick another
before
game, Chris.
December 23rd, okay? December 23rd and before, right?
Yes.
I'm
Is it
looking at it.
23rd?
I'm
December
looking at it.
21st.
Pick West
21st.
Virginia. Just pick West Virginia.
Yes.
No, I'm not going to. Okay, let's go with West Virginia it is.
Is that game before December 20? Yes, it is.
That game is
Okay.
eligible. You
Thank
can pick that.
I'm
goodness.
so confused.
Hey, Willie, Commissioner, how many points do I have?
Chase, currently, you have 29.5.
And he has
Oh, you
79.
got it.
He has
He has
79.
79. Yeah.
Okay,
has
he
79.
loses 51 points for
Not understanding the
For the
not
Wow,
rules.
understanding the rules.
Hey,
Hey, Chris.
I'm so confused.
Hey, Chris. Are you hear the words that are coming out of our mouths? You cannot pick anything after December 21st, man.
I'm trying. Hey, okay.
Goodness.
I'm changing my pick, there, man. I'm
No,
going
you're
with
not.
California
No,
over
no, you're good.
UNLV.
You're good.
A card laid is a
You
card
got this
played.
one. You finally stumbled upon a
You
game
found
you
one
can
that
pick.
works.
Exactly. So good, Chris. You're done.
Stumbled
You just
upon
kept
until he's
naming-
won the whole
just kept-
competition.
I'm
Kept
so
looking, naming
confused.
games until one of them was right. West Virginia is a 4-point dog playing in the Frisco Bowl at Toyota Stadium in
win?
Frisco, Texas, against
Mhm.
the number 25 Memphis Tigers.
The
Go
Scoot-
Tigers, go!
The Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl. Don't forget the sponsor, Scooters Coffee.
was that the Larry David Spite store?
No,
Is
that was
the one
Latte
you opened up?
Larry's. That would be the Latte Larry's Frisco Bowl.
I'm not sure who's playing in that.
The
bowl,
Mocha
Chris
Joe's
is West
Frisco
Virginia.
Bowl.
Oh, my goodness.
So that brings us to Chase McCabe for his second pick.
Uh,
Actually, it's Derek.
No, it's Chase.
No,
No,
it's
it's me.
Chase.
Yeah,
Okay,
'cause we're
sorry.
snaking
It's
it
Chase.
now.
That's
We're
right.
snaking it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll
Uh,
take your spot if you want me to.
You know what? They're playing spoiler.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
He's annoying, but why not? Give me Dabo. Give me Clemson.
Oh, I wanted that one. I thought I was gonna be able to sneak it in. Hate you, Chase.
And
Hold on,
Dabo we
man.
trust.
The
Hate you,
ACC champion is a 4-point dog. 11-point dog as they take on Texas, the number 3 seed in the first round of the college football playoff, and that will be down in Austin.
So we've picked all 4 games in the first
Mhm.
round of the
Yes.
college football playoff. So those games are no longer eligible.
thanks.
You got
Yep.
that, Chris?
All 4 off the board.
Yeah,
Well,
I
Chris
got
is
it,
done
man.
picking for
I'm done.
today. He doesn't have to worry about it now. That brings us to D-May
So
for his
confused.
second pick.
I want to make sure this Tulane, Florida. That's
I
not
took-
off the
I-
board.
I
Chase
took
Chase has
Okay,
chosen Tulane,
All
Florida.
right. Let me go to my second pick. Where was it? Oh, okay. Here it is. I am taking Western Kentucky
Ooh, I was thinking
over
about
James Madison.
Ooh.
I was thinking about that myself.
Hmm.
The Hilltoppers are down in Boca Raton to take on James Madison, who is a 9.5. So Western Kentucky is a 9.5-point dog in the Boca Raton Bowl against the Dukes of James Madison. So the Toppers and the Dukes going head to head.
All right.
Western Kentucky. And
Pickens
then
or slim?
The final pick. Yes, that would give Adam for the final pick here.
Pickens or slim?
Mhm.
I will select. They're both really uninspiring choices. I will take Sam Houston against Georgia Southern in the R&L Carriers New Orleans Bowl.
Okay. All right. 6-point dog.
This is another thing I was not aware of. This game will be played in the Superdome.
Mhm.
And Adam, I presume you being a Saints fan, you've been to a game in the Superdome?
Yes, many times.
I gave up a long home run to the University of South Carolina in the Superdome in the 1992 SEC tournament. It was configured
Oh, man.
originally as a baseball place as well. But the Superdome is now called the Caesars Superdome. Did you know
Yes.
that?
I did, yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Okay. You learn something every day.
Hmm.
I've
Sam
been to the
Houston.
I've been to the Superdome one time, and it was for WrestleMania.
Hey Willie, is that home run you gave up still the longest home run in the Superdome era?
I don't want to know. I don't want to know because it's possible.
I do.
It's possible.
Look that up, David.
Exactly.
It was a go. And it was not wind aided. Let me just tell you, the wind can't blow out of the Superdome.
Now,
So
to be clear, it does have a very strong AC system.
Maybe that was it.
They just happened to turn it on like as soon as.
Goodness, I'll never forget. It was a left-handed hitter, man, and he got all of it. It was not going well for the Doors. We did have fun though on the streets on Bourbon Street,
and that's why y'all lost. That's
Yeah.
why y'all lost, Willie.
Too many hurricanes.
Yeah, maybe you had a little too much fun before the game.
Exactly.
Sam Houston is a 6-point dog against Georgia Southern in the New Orleans Bowl. All right, so let's recap before we get to the People's Pick. Here is Bowl Draft Part 1. Adam Vingan selects with his 2 picks. He had picks 1 and 8. He goes Tennessee, 7.5-point dogs at Ohio State in the first round of the college football playoff in Columbus. Then he comes back with Sam Houston, 6-point dogs against Georgia Southern in the New Orleans Bowl. D-Mace has 2 picks. He has Indiana, a 7.5-point dog at Notre Dame in the first round. Came back with Western Kentucky, a 9.5-point dog in Boca Raton against James Madison. Chase McCabe has Tulane, a 14-point dog against the Florida Gators in the Gasparilla Bowl in Tampa. He also has Clemson, an 11-point dog against Texas in the first round playoff game down in Austin. And Chris Sanders, who has the commanding lead, has SMU, an 8.5-point dog against Penn State in Happy Valley, and West Virginia, a 4-point dog against Memphis in the bowl game, and that will be the Frisco Bowl in Frisco, Texas. So Chris has a huge lead. It's really a race for second place. D-Mace, Chase, 29.5, Adam with 26. So we will see what happens. 2 more picks coming up on December the 23rd. So, gentlemen, good luck.
Hey, is it Boca Raton or Boca Raton?
I think it's Raton.
Okay. Heard people say Boca Raton.
I've heard both, but I believe it's Boca Raton. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So good luck, everybody. Mike is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Mike, if you have a pick for games played before December or through December 21st, that's what's eligible. If you need assistance as to which games haven't been selected, I can help you.
Well, I was going to pick Indiana plus 7.5.
Well, Indiana, unfortunately, has been chosen.
So kind of help me out there.
All right. So let me tell you which games are eligible for selection.
Army-Navy.
You can take the Army-Navy game if you'd like.
That's a good one.
Jackson State and South Carolina State is available. South Alabama and Western Michigan is available. California and UNLV is available. Ohio and Jacksonville State is available. Those are your selections.
All right. Give me California.
All right. So actually, California is the favorite. So would you take UNLV in this game?
Well, is it? Well, UNLV. Oh, yeah, I'll take UNLV.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
A 10-win underdog. That's not a bad pick.
Huge.
UNLV is a 1.5-point dog against Cal in the LA Bowl, played at SoFi Stadium, where the Chargers and the Rams play.
All right, Mike. Well, if UNLV wins, you get a pair of tickets to see Gary Clark Jr. at the Ryman on March 7th. Good luck.
Thank you, sir.
All right. So we have all of our selections in. We'll make the second round of the picks next Monday, the 23rd. So good luck to everybody. Coming up next, Elliot Freeman of Sportsnet, 32 Thoughts podcast, 32 Thoughts column. We'll talk the Predators and all things NHL. Coming up next, Willie Dunnick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
All right, we're looking forward to talking with Elliot Friedman and catching up on the NHL, hockey, the Preds, etc., who play the Dallas Stars tonight, who have been awesome at home. Let's tell you about Loan Pronto. In the meantime, stop letting those high-interest debt things weigh you down financially. Pay it off in days thanks to Loan Pronto's brand new Rapid Equity Loan. So imagine yourself in a better financial position in 2025. It's hassle-free. You can cash out your home's equity, no appraisals, no paperwork, no waiting, because the Rapid Equity Loan from Loan Pronto uses AI-driven tech to get you approved for cash out in as little as 1 day. And then you take that cash, You address what you need. If you want to start a home improvement project in 2025, you can. You want to pay off that credit card bill? You can. Whatever you need that cash for. So homeowners, pay attention. Call Loan Pronto and see how much you qualify for and how much better off they can put you. This time next week, you could be credit card debt free. Call 615-499-5780 or go to loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 166-1781 on approved credit, NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you, joined on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, by the self-proclaimed #1 hockey hit on our station, Elliot Freeman, Sportsnet's NHL insider, co-host of the 32 Thoughts podcast, author of the 32 Thoughts column. Elliot, I was watching Saturday headlines on Hockey Night in Canada over the weekend. The Predators that night were losing to the Ottawa Senators. You said that, as we talked about last week, Barry Trotz hoping to take a deep breath, see where everything goes. But you wondered aloud if perhaps he might be backed into a corner with the way that the things have been going with the Predators. Their winless streak, as they play tonight against the Dallas Stars, has reached 8 games. It's their longest such streak in more than 10 years. Do you think we're getting closer to that point where Barry Trotz might be backed into a corner and therefore does something that he may not want to do?
I mean, I know what you're referring to. I don't think it's hard to miss, Adam. I really believe that he is doing everything he can to avoid making Andrew Brunette the scapegoat for all of this. And I actually admire it on a lot of levels. I really admire it because I think I like over my career, and I've been around for 30 years now, I've seen a lot of places where the easiest decision was made and the coach is the scapegoat or the coach gets thrown overboard. And I really believe, like I told you guys last week, when he was coming through Toronto, while I didn't speak to him directly, the word definitely was around that he really wanted to make sure that Brunette wasn't seen as the sole person who was responsible for this. And I believe that he has stuck with that. I believe on some level that he's trying to say that in the long term, people are going to grow out of adversity. I think that's something that Trotz believes in. And, like I said, we may get to a point. And the other thing, too, that's a real challenge, Adam, is I think there's a real limit to what he can do trade-wise. Obviously, a lot of his players have no trade and no move clauses. There's going to be guys he's not going to want to move. He's got some injuries too that affect the roster. And I think the other thing too is, and I think this whole thing with Parssinen is going to get to a head sometime soon, but you've already seen a couple of young guys go elsewhere and do very well. And I think if you're in Nashville, you want to stop that from being a storyline. So I think the I think the easy answer is yes. I definitely see him getting back into a corner, but I think the longer answer is, like in life, don't make a bad decision because you feel you have to do something. And I think that's what Trotz is trying to avoid.
Another team that everybody's keeping an eye on, a team that will be in Nashville on Tuesday, a team that kept you very busy last week, the New York Rangers. They did win last night. They defeated the Buffalo Sabres, a team that has its own set of problems. But we saw last week the trading of Jacob Trouba. I thought the conversations you've been having about, the changes perhaps in how teams give out these no trade, no movement clauses to protect situations like we've seen with the Rangers on more than one occasion, not with just Jacob Trouba, but Barclay Goodrow as well. But the Rangers, despite winning last night, I believe have still lost 8 of 11. This is a team that just went to the Eastern Conference Final and won the President's Trophy. So what could be next for the New York Rangers? I know that Chris Kreider was also mentioned in that league-wide memo that included Trouba. But if things continue to go south in New York, what's the big move the Rangers can make?
I still think they're looking at their blue line, Adam. Ryan Lindgren is a guy who plays and competes really hard, and I think there's a chance he could be coming to the end of his time in New York. I think everybody kind of sees the writing on the wall there. I think the blue line is going to be a big focus for them. I believe the Rangers, like the Rangers could have had Cam Fowler in that deal with Anaheim and didn't want it. So even though I think he could have helped them, I just think it says to me that they want their financial flexibility. They want their cap room. So either they're going to add something this summer, or try to anyway, among the big free agent class, or I think JT Miller was a guy who was on their radar. I'm just not convinced he's going anywhere right now. I think that's what they're looking at is, can they add a big scorer? Can they add another defenseman, remake their blue line? And I think that's I think they're just trying to add something, trying to find the best possible players they can find. I think that's the way to put it. But those things are hard to do in mid-season.
We're talking with Elliot Friedman, 32 Thought Podcast. Listen to it whenever you get a chance to. Now, Elliot, we have Barry on every week with Jarrett. And it seems like it's must listen radio whenever Barry's on because of his honesty. But he did say something this week. I'm not sure if you heard it or not, but he did say something this week about possibly some things he could have done different through this whole process as far as free agency. And he did mention the center position and him probably approaching it a little bit different, being creative and how to go about that position. Obviously, we know he didn't get anyone at that position, and they've had a lot of turnover at the center position. But what do you make of what he explained about that position?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to notice, to mention, Derek, that while it's always a great hit, it still is the second best hockey hit on the station. Okay.
I agree with you.
Let's not forget. Okay. When I'll say this, I didn't get a chance to listen to it this week. I will go back and do it. I was down in Florida at the board. I was traveling and I didn't get a chance to listen. But off the top of my head, the one thing I would think there, and I could see him not naming the name because he's still a current Predator, but they have to be disappointed with what's happened this year with Novak. And look, like when you go back there, if you look at the roster, opening night, nobody was hurt. So you've got them putting together a team that you're like, opening night, we're very excited. We just had a great summer. We're really looking forward to our year. This is our lineup. And who was at the 2C spot? It was him. And they were really hopeful. And like, he's a really talented guy. And, he was being put with, if I remember correctly, opening night was Stamkos. I can't remember if it was Marchessault.
It was Marchessault on the other side.
Okay. So like, just think about this. Like, so Barry, in his eyes, he's seeing, and Brunette too, they're seeing opening night, Tommy Novak, between Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault. And they're like, what's the last thing you think you're going to have to worry about with that line? Scoring. And it just hasn't worked. And, I loved it when they re-signed Novak. I think he's a really talented guy. It just hasn't worked. And it's been a really hard season for him. So, and the thing is, Trotz, he wants to be honest. I think, the segment he does every week on Tuesday, he knows that the Nashville hockey fans, they want to hear from him, and he's talking directly to them. And so when I hear what you're referring to there, Derek, I'm thinking he's saying, I want to answer the question honestly. I want to be fair to the host and the fans, but he doesn't really want to call out Novak by name. But to me, when I hear that, that's what I'm thinking about, that they were hopeful that spot would be sorted out. And unfortunately, it hasn't been. And maybe what he would have done is he would have attacked the summer differently if he knew that it was going to be this much of a problem. That's what I would think, Derek, based on that answer.
Talking to Elliot Friedman, 32 Thoughts. And Elliot, another theme, and it was a long session. It almost sounded like a therapy session because, as you said, Barry Trotz he wants to get messages out to the fans. He wants to show how much he cares and how much he wants to succeed, which is admirable, right? I mean, that's his best asset, I think, is if you're a Predator fan, how dedicated he is to the market, to the organization. He wants to win for Nashville specifically. And one thing he said is sometimes you have a year that just doesn't go right. And this was before they lost to Calgary, a team that had really struggled on the road, and they lost Roman Josi, and they were playing without Josi, Carrier, Lausanne, O'Reilly, Nyquist in that game. So things haven't gotten any better since he did that interview. But he said sometimes you just have a year where it doesn't go right. And so he was talking a little bit about if it doesn't get better soon, maybe you play accordingly and you hope to bounce back next year, knowing that you're committed to a lot of these veteran players. But if he became a seller, what do you think is out there? We looked at the roster yesterday, and we're looking at guys like Gus Nyquist, who's a free agent. Colton Sisson's got 1 year left. You've mentioned Jeremy Lauzon. If the Predators decided to be sellers, what does the market look like there?
Well, I think, first of all, it depends on how many sellers there are. And right now, there's some, but not a ton. If you want to be here's the thing, there's a lot of poker players out there, right? There's good poker players in this league. And it comes down to two things. Number one, how wanted is your player? And number two, how patient you're willing to be. And I think that, Trotz has made it clear that he's willing to do things. And as I've talked to you guys before, there's a lot of GMs out there, when you're struggling, they throw you the anvil, they throw you the life preserver. I think his number one concern right now is don't make the problems worse. Don't do something everybody out there in Nashville wants him to do something. The worst thing he could do is do something that only compounds the mistake. So I think he's dealing with that. I do think Nyquist would have interest. He's better than this. I don't know that he's as good as he was last year, where he had, I think, a historic shooting percentage, but he's better than this. I think that Sissons is the kind of player that teams really love in the postseason. I actually think that having another year under contract could make him more valuable, because you get him for 2 playoff rounds instead of playoff runs instead of 1. I mentioned Lauzon, but I think Trotz indicated that he wasn't looking to move him. I think teams would love to get their hands on Jeremy Lauzon. But like I said, I think and I don't think Barry's position is wrong. Free hockey and all sports are littered with free agents who the first year was terrible and then they recover. Whether it's the shock, the change, the system, whatever it is, I do believe that that's not the wrong path to take. I told you what Marchessault said last week in Toronto. He says, I didn't sign here for 1 year. I signed here for 5. We're going to figure this out. And I think that can happen. It's just a tough message to send 25 to 30 games into the season, because it's not what your fans want to hear, right? They're like, oh, okay, this year we're writing off already. They don't like that. Now, but sometimes it is the right approach. I think, to me right now, the number one thing that Barry Trotz has to do, and it's not sexy sounding, and I've said it 3-4 times in this interview already, but the number one thing he has to do is not do something that makes everything worse. I think the most fascinating thing right now is you've got, Marchessault with his comments to the French media.
I was going to ask you about that next.
And Brunette's had a couple of stingers this week. I'm reading these quotes and I'm like, holy cow. I think it's kind of interesting that so far Trotz is like, hey guys, you can say whatever you want, but you guys got to figure this out. Sometimes I think that's the best path. Hey guys, we all go to work and we're not all happy with each other some days. Not everybody gets thrown out of, you don't often get a chance to have people thrown out of your work. Sometimes you got to work through it. And sometimes you're forced to work through it. And, if that's going to be the plan, I'm not necessarily against that.
Well, let's take the Marchessault thing a little further, because I agree with you, Elliot. I think it's essential, even if this year does not rebound the way it goes in the direction it's going. Long term, it is important that Marchessault finds his spot, finds his place, because they've got him for a long time, like you've referenced. Same thing with Stamkos, who played with Marchessault in Forsberg. They're going to stick with that tonight for a second straight game, even with O'Reilly and Nyquist coming back in. So I'm curious how that looks tonight in Dallas. A very, very tough place to win.
Oh, yeah.
But you mentioned Marchessault. He did the interview in French, and you guys have referenced this on podcasts before. That will happen every now and then. I think there was an example a couple of summers ago where Evgeny Kuznetsov just kind of lit up the whole Washington organization in a Russian interview. It still, though, comes back to people, right? Even though we're not reading the French outlets, Barry Trotz clearly took note of what Marchessault said. He referenced it in his interview this week, and he had a long talk with Jonathan Marchessault in Ottawa right after that happened. But what's your thought when a player does that? Because I guess the player probably feels more comfortable speaking in his first language, and you feel like you can kind of vent a little bit more.
Well, I think that's true. Like, I always give the benefit of the doubt in those situations. Like, the first question I ask is, okay, is something being translated wrong? Like, I remember a player got furious at me once. It wasn't even me who did it, but he gave an article. I think it was the goalie who was a Czech goalie. His name is Peter Budaj. He reached out to me once because he gave some interview to a newspaper back in Czechia, and someone just used Google Translate to translate it. And he said it wasn't fair. Like, the way the Google Translate came out, it wasn't fair. So he asked me, like, these are my quotes, just put it out there for me. So I'm always very careful of that. Like, is the translation accurate, as you said, Willie? Like, I think sometimes players are guilty of thinking, and especially in this day and age, you should be well aware of that. Like, 25 years ago, before the internet and social media, you could get away with that. You could say something in Quebec. You could say something overseas, and nobody would ever know. But right now, it's like, I always tell, like, whenever I speak to young people about this job, I always tell them, assume that any text or email you send is going to end up all over social media. Now, 99.9% of the time, it's not going to be that way. But that 0.1% where it does happen, if you've written something you regret, you're going to be in big trouble. So I think the players have to be aware of that too. Like, the thing is, like, one of the biggest things you have to do, particularly when you're going, like, we talked about this last week on the show. Adam asked the question. You guys are going through Canada last week. The season's not going very well. What were all those players doing? They were talking about, we still got lots of time. We made some changes to the system. Like, we think we can still make this work. Even if they don't believe it, it's like, you're going through Canada. Don't pour gasoline on the fire. And Marchessault made the mistake there of pouring the gasoline on the fire. And I don't blame Trotz for being mad about that one. And, in that particular case, Marchessault's just he's got to eat it and apologize, because in that situation, well, I don't know if he apologized, but he has to live with the criticism in that case, because, when you're going badly, don't give other reason for people to kick you when you're down. You can't do that. And I bet you that's the reason that Brunette was so snarky this week, because he's looking at that quote and saying, "Are you kidding me?"
Well, what Barry Trotz exposed in the conversation, because one of Marchessault's points was, I'm playing with a lot of different guys, which is absolutely true. And I can understand to a degree that he's frustrated with that he hasn't found his groove with a line. But he used an example in Montreal where he warmed up in the line rushes with one group and then started the game with a different group. And he used that to sort of as an example and see how they're moving me around on the different lines. And Barry Trotz said, do you not understand that he started the two Montreal guys? He started Zach Leroux. As you know, Elliot, sometimes you start the guy who's playing against his former team or something like that. That was the idea. That's why he did that. And Barry Trotz, that was the point he shared on the radio, was there's the disconnect there. You do understand that's your coach trying to back you up. That's not your coach trying to jerk you around there. So there was a miscommunication somewhere along the line.
Well, you know what, and I'll say this too. I'm first of all, I'm really glad you told me that, because like I said, I missed the interview this week. That'll teach me, don't miss that intervue. Secondly, so for this week, we'll say
even though don't miss your interview because you're the number one interview.
Well, you know what, this week I'll tip my cap because Barry did good, gave great information there. You know what, I'll say too, like I've dealt with Marchessault a lot. Okay, I'll tell you this about this guy. Him and Stamkos, they couldn't have had a different path to Nashville. Stamkos was a number one pick, 60-goal scorer, big star, and he earned it. Like, I'm not saying that he was gifted this or he was handed it or he waltzed into it. Steven Stamkos worked and earned number one pick, and he's had terrible injuries, and he's always fought back from them. I'm a big Stamkos guy. No matter how rough this year's been, I'm a big Stamkos guy. Jonathan Marchessault, was the ultimate underdog, scrapped and clawed and fought for every inch he got. Didn't really make it until he was later. So he always has the chip on his shoulder. You look at this past year, Vegas wanted to sign him, but it had to be on their terms. They wanted deferred money. He felt, it's clear, if you've seen his interviews, he felt disrespected. Now, people can argue if that's true. I'm sure people are looking now at what's happening and saying, well, boy, Vegas was right all along. But Marchessault, to him, it's just, that's who he is. That's the way he is wired. That's the reason he was the MVP of the Stanley Cup playoffs 2 years ago. That's the reason he's carved out a big role in this league. It's because he's got this constant chip on his shoulder. And look, he's here now. It's not going very well. His numbers aren't good. He knows people are poking at him, and he's defensive. And it's because he's but I'll tell you this, some of that is his own frustration because he knows he's below expectation. And I think it kills him inside to be below expectation.
Elliot Friedman, Sportsnet's NHL insider, co-host of the 32 Thoughts podcast, author of the 32 Thoughts column, joining us here as he does every Thursday. Elliot, great stuff. Even though you're giving yourself number 2 this week, you're still number 1 in our hearts.
Don't worry, I'll be back next week, and I will reclaim my throne, and Barry will be relegated to the second position.
Elliot, thank you so much.
All right, take care, guys.
Elliot Friedman joining us on the program. We actually haven't discussed those Marchessault comments. We were planning on doing it the other day, but we did not get to it. So why don't we do that next? Coming up, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Always a pleasure to speak to Elliot Freeman. Willie, you referenced comments that Jonathan Marchessault made to French language media while the team was in Montreal last week. We actually haven't had a chance to discuss those comments. And I'm like you, Willie, and Elliot as well. When I see these comments circulating around social media, it's in a different language, I'm always hesitant to use Google Translate because things could get lost in translation. So when I saw this article come out, I actually sent it to 2 native French speakers. If you work in hockey long enough, you know plenty of people who speak French. So I sent the article to 2 native French speakers, both based in Montreal. And their translation was actually pretty close to the Google Translate translation, but it made me feel better about it, knowing that I actually had someone who speaks French look at the comments. So the comments that went around the most, and the one that Barry Trotz answered for with Jared, Marchessault said, quote, "I've been changing partners in my line a lot since the start of the season. I think I've played with just about everybody." He then goes on later to say, "Every shift, I wonder who I'm jumping on the ice with. I had a line during the warm-up, and I started the game with other guys. I changed lines about 3 times tonight." Now, he said other things, such as, "I'm a soldier. You tell me to be here, I'll be here. You tell me what to do, I'll do it. They seem to want to use me that way. I'll give it everything I got." He also said, "I'm leaving a place in Vegas where I belonged. I'm coming here and trying to find my place, but it's hard to find it. I don't really have any words." So he also took responsibility in those quotes through the French press, not to be confused with a French press if you like coffee. He said that he did.
Our house, as a matter of fact.
Yes, he did take responsibility for his play, but those comments about I've been on so many different lines and my lines changed 3 times tonight. Those were the comments that spread around the most. And as you said, Willie and Elliot concurred, when things aren't going well, you don't want to pour gasoline on the fire, especially when the Predators are traveling through some hockey hotbeds. And I thought that those comments and Trotz's comments in response, clearly those comments got back to Barry Trotz, and you could tell he was not thrilled with what Marchessault had to say.
I don't think anybody was. I don't think Andrew Brunette was either. But Barry Trotz did acknowledge publicly on our radio station, which is why you should listen to our station, because Barry gives you the info. That's something he could have kept private, but he made it a point to say, I talked to Marchessault. And I think, look, this isn't something where he shows up every day and nobody wants to talk. They want to make this work, right? Marchessault wants to make it work. Barry Trotz does. Andrew Brunette does. They've all got their own way of how to go about that process, and it hasn't happened. Although he did have his best game in the last game. That was Tuesday against Calgary, and they're going to keep that trio together. Marchessault playing with Stamkos as the center and Forsberg on the left wing. Let's see if that has some traction. They're going to roll it out tonight. And, of course, you're going up against a high-level defensive team, high-level all-around team tonight in Dallas. So if you can make it happen tonight, then that's a great sign that maybe you have something long-term. So we will see, because everything they've tried, it might work for a game or two, but nothing has really gained traction. And that's why they are where they are. But Barry Trotz, I think the one thing that really set him off was he felt like Marchessault used the fact that Andrew Brunette started him to honor the fact that he's from Montreal area, and Zach Leroux is from Montreal, had a ton of family there. And so you start those guys. That's why he started a group that did not warm up together. That was not some zany thing by Andrew Brunette to try to throw a curveball at the Canadians or throw a curveball at Marchessault, but Marchessault tried to make it sound like, hey, this coach doesn't know what he's doing. He warmed me up with one line and then he started me on another. Well, there's a perfectly sound reason for that, which happens a lot in the NHL. So that, I think, more than any other of the comments that he made really bugged Barry Trotz, and I think he hashed it out accordingly.
I wonder, Willie, in that sort of situation, because to me, if the player wasn't informed, then I can see how Marshall Salt would after the game say something like that. If there wasn't a heads up, hey, listen, this is what we're thinking about doing. This is what we're going to do. You're back home, so we want to do this. If that was told to him, then shame on Marshall Salt for then taking that and using that against the head coach. Now, if that wasn't explained to him, I can see how he would say, hey, listen, y'all playing me on different lines, and I need to, get some type of stability here. Again, if they told him that and he still went out and said what he said, shame on him. But if they didn't convey that to him, then I can understand what he's saying in that regard. So I don't know if it was told to him prior to the game or not. And that's what I'm asking you.
Well, it is announced to the team in the locker room who is the starting lineup. So I think that is enough of a routine. And Adam, you tell me if you concur with this, that when a guy's playing against his former team, like tonight, I would not be surprised at all if Matt Duchene starts against the Predators. It's just sort of a customary thing. It's something that a lot of coaches do to try to give the team a little jack up, give that player a little nudge saying, hey, I know you're back in your hometown, or you're playing against the team that traded you, or whatever the case may be. And so you get to start tonight, right? It's not like the basketball where you're going to start your starting five, almost every time. In hockey, the shifts go so short, you usually try to deliver a message. Am I starting my character group? Like last year, they started Michael McCarron's group for that identity to start the game. There's usually a motivation. So I think that should be something that doesn't have to be explained to Marchessault. And I think he should have known that right off the bat, that's what was happening. That's your coach trying to give you a boost. That's your coach trying to say, let me get you going. I acknowledge you're in your hometown. Let's make this a good night for you.
But I understand everything that you're saying, Willie. But the contrary to what you just said, it's like, okay, if you tell me that, then I know. Like I've been told, you can't expect someone to think like you. So if you want them, you got to explain to them what you're exactly doing and why you're doing it. So there will not be this sort of ambiguity with what you're saying. Yeah. I'm not saying that coach didn't say that.
To me, it should have been obvious.
Yeah. And see, exactly. You know that world better than I do, but just coming from the professional sports world, it's better if you tell me this is why you're doing it than just doing it and expecting me to understand why you did it or understand why you did it. But I get what you're saying. If it's customary for that to be done, he should have known. But you give him sort of an out if you don't explain it all the way through. Like, this is why we're doing what we're doing.
Well, the bigger thing is the issue that Marshall brought up. And I want to hear your thoughts on it, Adam, because he has played on a lot of different lines, right? But this is the classic dilemma. This is the perspective of Andrew Brunette. Look, you're supposed to drive whatever your line you're on. You're the guy that has scored 40 goals last year. You're the guy that's been on a lot of winning teams. We got you to drive these other lines. You should not be a player that is reliant solely upon the guys you play with so you can be productive. That's one of the reasons they paid him the big bucks to bring him here. So Andrew Brunette saying, I don't want to move you around to the different lines, but what choice do I have when you've struggled everywhere I've put you? That is the perspective I'm getting, not directly from Andrew Brunette, but that's the signals I'm getting. Andrew Brunette would be the first to tell you he'd love to put in the same lineup with the same guys every game because that's how you get into a groove. But he's felt like he's had no choice. So I don't think he's choosing to move Marchessault around to try to put him in a bad spot. He wants more than anybody for Marchessault to be successful.
And I think it was good that Barry Trotz said what he said with Jared, explaining the reason why. Because I'll be honest, I hadn't thought of that, despite the fact that, as Willie said, it is custom in the NHL.
Yeah. I'll say this. We said it on our broadcast because we were throwing a curveball when they put the starting lineup out, and we knew that that's not how the line rushes went in the warm-ups, we were going to show the lines in our open, and then we saw that, and we're like, wait a minute, did they change all of the lines? And I did say on the opening faceoff, they're starting a couple of Montreal guys. And then as the game unfolded, they went back to the lines that they had warmed up in. And in fairness to Marchessault, they did swap them up again late in the game because they hadn't scored, right? So they jumbled the lines in the third period because they were trying to shake it up and find something that worked.
And to your point, Willie, and we'll wrap this up here, Marchessault, and this goes really for the whole team, but since we're talking about Jonathan Marchessault, he has not played well enough to be on one line with consistent line mates. It has not worked out for the entire team, but it also hasn't worked out for him. Now, we did score 2 goals the other night. That line showed some promise. Maybe that gets him going. But to Willie's point, I've been hard on Andrew Brunette. I've also been hard on Jonathan Marchessault. And in this situation, Marchessault hasn't done enough this season to be given, the idea of, hey, we're going to keep this line together as long as we can. It just hasn't worked. So, it's the point is when things aren't going well, it tends to snowball. And this situation was an example of a frustrated team. And the Predators hope that that frustration ends tonight against the Dallas Stars. We'll wrap up the show next. Willie Darnick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
All right, let's talk about Lee Company. Tonight's coverage on 102.5 The Game for the Predators will start at 6 o'clock, and it will be brought to you in part by Lee Company. And they have been doing great things in our listening area since 1944. A very successful business that goes back decades and decades. Getting close to a century now. They do great things for our house. As the weather gets colder, remember the heating unit is so important day in and day out. Do you have it running properly? Is it efficient for you? That's where Lee Company can do so much good for you. And the best way to do it is the preventative maintenance angle called the home maintenance plan, annual checkup. So you pay a small monthly fee. You get the annual checkups, not only on the heating unit, air conditioning in the spring when the summer months are just around the corner, plus your plumbing and electrical services. You get those checkups. They find those little problems. And when you do need maintenance, you will get discounts on the repairs. Lee Company. 615-567-1000 or leecompany.com. That's 615-567-1000 or leecompany.com.
D-Mays Fingendonic coming up. D-Mays Fingendonic is coming on right now. Stillman and Company is coming up next. Tongue-tied there. I know what my own show is. Stillman and Company is coming up next. Jake Lyman and Teron Davenport filling in for Jared Stillman. So a little Jake and TD on Thursday afternoon. A lot of Titans talk coming up next. So the Predators are in Dallas. Roman Josi out tonight, day-to-day with a lower body injury. But Willie, if I saw correctly, Ryan O'Reilly will return to the lineup tonight.
Ryan O'Reilly and Gus Nyquist should be back in there based on what we saw at morning skate today. O'Reilly, Nyquist, and Colton Sissons. They will keep Forsberg, Stamkos, and Marchessault together. They will keep Jankowski, Novak, Evangelista together. It does look like they will sit Fedor Svechkov tonight, and I don't think it is a long-term thing. I think it's just, maybe a little fatigue mentally. He had a rough game against Tuesday. I think it's a step back, hopefully to take a couple of steps forward with him. They love his overall game. They think he is going to be a really good player. But and then the same as tonight. Justus Annunen was in the starter's crease, and I think with UC Saros playing 11 of the last 12 games, I think they thought he looked a little tired. I was talking to Chris Mason about this morning. Just a little tired, and for his standard, which is so high, he was below standard on Tuesday against Calgary. That was one of the things that was such a tough thing, is they actually did get a little offense. They scored 3, and it coincided with maybe not their best performance defensively. And of course, the Roman Josi thing piled on to all of that. So that's what it looks like from here. And they've called up Kevin Gravel to replace Roman Josi. So they are really getting deep. This will be the 10th defenseman they use already. And this is game 30 for the season.
Adam in Portland on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. I can't speak in this last segment. We brought in Jonathan Marchessault for his leadership and Stanley Cup resume, and he's playing like Ryan Hartman, GTFOH, going on record complaining. When it's bad, it's bad. But all over the televisions in the studio, we've been watching or looking at, because we can't hear the sound, Bill Belichick's introductory news conference as head coach of the North Carolina football program. And I just have to say one thing. All right. So as part of the introduction, the athletic director for Carolina, whose name is, and I kid you not, Bubba Cunningham. That's a great athletic director name, particularly for North Carolina. Bubba Cunningham donned a sports coat with the sleeves cut off. We got to stop with the sleeves cutting off with Bill Belichick.
No, it's cool.
No,
that is cool.
No,
I like that.
No, it's old hat at this point. Old sweatshirt, which is what Bill Belichick wears when he coaches. We got to stop with this. Oh, look at me. I'm cutting the sleeves off of my sport coat. Who cares? It's dumb, stupid.
Well, I mean,
strongly disagree.
Spoken like a true Duke fan.
Exactly. Absolutely. So.
If Bill Belichick were
go ahead. Would Duke ever have an athletic director named Bubba?
They might have had it at some point.
I can guarantee they never had a AD named Bubba.
They're too sophisticated.
Now, to be fair, how many ADs have there been in all college sports named Bubba?
You got a point there.
Probably not a lot.
I'm just talking the nickname too.
His actual name is Lawrence, so I could see why he wanted to go with Bubba. Lawrence R. Bubba Cunningham.
That's one reason they're gonna lose.
Oh man,
that's one reason this ain't gonna work.
They presented Bill Belichick with the cutoff sweatshirt, but then Bubba Cunningham put on the suit jacket with the cutoff sleeves, and I'm just like, oh my god, this is gonna be terrible. It just started, and I know this is gonna be.
I hope it does work out.
I don't.
I know you don't.
But
for many
why
reasons.
is that?
I'll show you my birth certificate.
He was born at the University of Duke. That's where he was born.
Durham, North Carolina. That'll do it for us today. Jake Lyman and Teron Davenport filling in for Jared Stillman. Coming up next on 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Be love on your people. Have a blessed, wonderful, and safe Thursday. Peace.
But you can't stay.